Beloved, this message is for you. When that moment burst into your life, shaking your very soul, it wasn't mere chance, it was the hand of God, orchestrating a divine encounter to guide you toward His purpose for your life. That event wasn't simply meant to challenge you, it was designed to bring you face to face with the deeper truths you've buried, the parts of yourself that desperately needed to be illuminated by the light of Christ. We often cross paths with individuals who disrupt our comfort, people who stir something profound within us, much like the encounter between Saul and Christ on the road to Damascus, Acts 9 verse 3-6. These moments of deep connection, though painful, are God's way of stripping away the layers of self-deception, forcing us to relinquish the masks we wear. Just as C.S. Lewis once wrote, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. That connection you experienced, so raw and intense, was not meant to comfort you but to refine you, to unmake the illusions you've held, preparing you for a greater purpose. That person wasn't sent to soothe your soul, they were sent to awaken it. Their presence felt like a storm sent by God Himself, shaking your very foundation not to destroy you, but to rebuild you. They uncovered your insecurities, wounds, and unresolved traumas, and in doing so, they mirrored back the parts of you that needed God's healing touch. This process, though painful, was a call to surrender, much like Jacob wrestling with God, Genesis 32 verse 24-30, a struggle that leaves us transformed. When they left, it felt as though the world had collapsed, a gaping void left behind in their wake. But even in that void, God was working. Sometimes the silence speaks louder than the storm. Their absence was not abandonment, but rather God's way of drawing you closer to Him, urging you to place your trust not in human connections, but in His eternal promise. As Isaiah 43 verse 2 reminds us, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers they shall not overwhelm you. In their departure you didn't lose yourself, you found God. And through Him you are being made whole again. This was never about the person, it was always about God's plan for you, drawing you closer to His grace and transforming you into who He created you to be. You've pulled your inner child from the depths of neglect and bathed it in the nurturing care it always deserved. The wounds of your past no longer define you, no longer hold you captive. The scars, once fresh and bleeding, are now symbols of the battles you fought and won. You've grounded yourself in a way that seemed inconceivable before. Once, the storms of life would knock you off your feet, sending you spiraling into chaos. Now you stand rooted like a mountain, immovable, unshakable. You found your center, and it radiates with the kind of power that only comes from surviving your own personal hell. Now you rise. Look at you, standing stronger than ever, forged by the fires they thought would break you. You've scraped your soul raw, rebuilt it with trembling hands, and emerged as a force to be reckoned with. They tried to keep you down, but here you are, unshakable, immovable, grounded in the power you've always had within you. And now, it's time to take that strength even further. This is your moment to rise and step into the obsidian inner order, where the true chosen ones gather, armed with wisdom, power, and the modern manifestation mechanics grimoire exclusive to those who dare. The devastation they left behind wasn't meant to destroy you, but to strip away the illusions, to burn off the dead weight that kept you bound to an old version of yourself. And now look at you. You have healed, not in the shallow way people use that word, but in the way that feels like you've scraped your very soul raw, broken it down, and rebuilt it with trembling hands. Your heart, once fractured and aching, has been pieced back together, not by someone else, but by your own inner will, your own light. Through this grounding, you've unlocked something far greater, the highest version of yourself. You've stepped into your own light, the one that has always been there, waiting for you to see it. Your heart is open now, not to anyone else, but to the vast potential of who you are. This is the result of that connection, that explosion from the past. It was never about them. It was always about you, chosen one. The fire they sparked in you burned away the illusions, leaving only your truest, most powerful self standing in the ash. In the desolation they left behind, you found yourself. The raw, unfiltered truth of who you are emerged from the ashes of that destruction. You saw your own reflection in the shattered pieces of what they broke in you. This was never about love in the traditional sense. This was about awakening. They were the catalyst, the wrecking ball that had to come into your life to obliterate the walls you built around yourself. You thought they were the one to save you, but really, they were the one to destroy you so you could finally save yourself. This person wasn't a mere passerby in your life. They were the flame thrown into dry kindling, igniting a wildfire that could not be contained. You may have once thought their presence was temporary, just a fleeting chapter, but the truth is far deeper. They were a force, a catalyst that shattered the walls of your being and set off an irreversible transformation. They weren't here to walk alongside you. They were here to tear apart the foundations of everything you thought you knew, to plunge you into the darkness where true growth happens. This isn't for the faint of heart. You've earned your scars, and now it's time to turn them into badges of honor. Inside the audio, you'll access uncensored content that YouTube can't handle, and you'll unlock knowledge that will shape your future, knowledge that most people aren't ready for. If you've been through hell and back, if you faced the storm and stood your ground, then this is where you belong. You'll join a rapidly growing community of over 300 chosen ones, where you'll find connection, strength, and the next level of your ascension. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Your path is clear, your power undeniable, and your next step is right here. The link to Patreon is in the description. It's time to rise. It's time to claim your place among the elite, to inherit the universe, and to be part of the #1 nexus for chosen ones on the internet. The Star Chamber is waiting for you, but slots are limited. Step up now and take what's yours. They still linger in your life, don't they? Always hovering on the edge of your reality, drawn to you like a moth to a flame, yet terrified of the fire you've become. They want to be with you, there's no doubt about that, but fear grips them, holding them in a prison of their own making. They can't take the leap. They know deep down that they're not at your level. While you've been ascending, breaking barriers and stepping into your highest self, they've stayed frozen in place, stuck in a cycle of indecision, afraid to face the very evolution you've embraced. Their self-sabotage is a spiral they choose to live in, a cycle they can't seem to break. They come close to the flame of your brilliance, drawn by its warmth, only to pull away in fear. But that's no longer your concern. Their battle with their own indecision, their constant struggle to commit to what they know in their heart is real, is no longer a weight you are willing to carry. You are not here to heal them, to save them from themselves, or to wait for them to finally see what's been in front of them all along. That burden, that endless loop of emotional uncertainty, belongs to them, and you finally let it go. This isn't love, it's a test, one that stretches your patience and resilience to the very limits. And now, the exhaustion has set in. You've done the work. You've dug into the depths of your soul, confronted your demons, healed the fractured parts of yourself. You've spent countless hours rebuilding the pieces of your spirit that they shattered. You've grown, evolved, and transformed into someone far stronger than the person they first met. The twin flame operates on a rhythm you know all too well, a pattern of arrival, upheaval, and abandonment. They come in like a lightning bolt, striking you without warning, sending your entire reality into chaos. They trigger something deep within you, poking at your insecurities, forcing old wounds to resurface. And just when you're caught in the whirlwind they've created, they vanish. Their disappearance isn't quiet, it leaves destruction in its wake, and you're left picking up the pieces once again. You've outgrown this connection, and the exhaustion you feel isn't weakness. It's a sign that you've reached the end of what this lesson has to teach you. You are ready to close the door. The pattern can't continue unless you let it. You've reached a point of clarity, one that burns with the intensity of a supernova. The chaos they once brought into your life, the way they treated your heart like a revolving door, no longer has power over you. You've shed the skin of someone who was willing to accept half measures and broken promises. Now you see through their actions, their indecision, their constant push and pull. You've outgrown the games. You've realized, with a force that shakes the core of your being, that you are not an option to be weighed, picked up, and cast aside at their convenience. You are the prize, the shining beacon of worth that no longer waits for validation from someone who cannot even validate their own soul. You found something greater in the calm, in the balance, in the unwavering presence of what truly supports your highest self. The twin flames chaos no longer draws you in. You've changed, evolved, and stepped into a new space where peace and stability matter more than the allure of intensity. Their reappearance isn't a sign to reconnect, but a test of your growth. You see the pattern now for what it is, a cycle that no longer serves you. Now feels like a step backward, a pull into a version of yourself you no longer recognize. Yet this connection continues to test you, to prod at the edges of your peace, threatening to drag you back into the spiral you fought so hard to escape. Their presence, whether physical or energetic, is a constant reminder of the unfinished business they represent. But here's the truth, chosen one, this cycle only has power over you as long as you allow it. They will continue to come and go, to toy with the threads of your soul, as long as you remain open to their games. The real test is not in surviving their chaos, it's in finally breaking free from the cycle. Their indecision, their inability to choose, is not your reflection, it is their mirror, their battle, and one that you are no longer willing to fight on their behalf. You've grown, evolved, and realized that your path is not tied to their uncertainty. You are free. And in that freedom, you've reclaimed your worth. You stand as the prize, unshaken, untouchable by their self-inflicted chaos. The time for waiting is over. The time for knowing who you truly are has begun. They manifest you into their life when it suits them. But when it comes to grounding this connection in the real world, they falter, retreat, and leave you standing in the shadow of their inconsistency. The games they play are insidious. They reel you in with the promise of something deep, something transformative, and for a brief moment you are drawn into that fire again, thinking this time might be different. But it's never different. The cycle repeats chaos, pain, and abandonment. They leave behind a void that feels impossible to fill, not because you need them, but because they force you to face the darkest corners of your soul, only to abandon you there. There's no more room for the half-hearted attempts they bring to the table. You've grown past that. Your spirit has expanded, your sense of self has solidified, and the time when you allowed someone else to dictate your worth has ended. You've learned the lesson: your worth was never in question. It was always there, burning beneath the surface, waiting for you to recognize it. And now you do, chosen one. You see yourself clearly, standing tall in your power, no longer bending under the weight of someone else's confusion. Each time they reappear in your life, it feels as if they are trying to pull you back into their chaos, attempting to stop the progress you've made. They see the change in you, the distance growing as you ascend higher, and they struggle with it. Yet their disruption of your peace is not rooted in malice, but in their own lost state. While you were once vulnerable to being drawn into their storm, now you stand firm, unmoved by their chaos. With eyes open by divine wisdom, you recognize the patterns, the manipulation, the subtle attempts to bring you back into their orbit. But by God's grace, you've learned too much. Through Him, you've shed the old layers of insecurity, fear, and doubt. As the Bible reminds us, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, Romans 12 verse 2. You are no longer swayed by their tactics, because you've been transformed, and your worth is anchored in Christ, not in the opinions of others. Their fear, their stagnation, and their inability to grow is their burden to carry. It's not yours. You've walked through the valleys, faced your inner demons with God by your side, and have emerged with a strength they cannot comprehend. The power they once held over you has crumbled, swept away like dust in the wind, as the truth of your identity in Christ shines brighter. In the past, their reappearance might have shaken you, but now it serves as a reminder of how far you've come through God's guise. You've broken free from the chains that once bound you, much like the Israelites who were delivered from the oppression of Egypt. As the Lord told them, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Exodus 14 verse 14. You no longer have to fight with human effort, for you have trusted in God's deliverance. The fear they have of losing you is evident, but it's too late. You have risen above the limits they once tried to impose on you. You now see them clearly, as the fog of confusion has lifted, and their influence is gone. You've outgrown the storm they bring, much like gold refined by fire. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. James 1 verse 2-3. What was meant to break you has, in fact, strengthened you, molding you into the person God intended you to become. The trials, the pain, and the confusion weren't there to define you but to refine you. And now, you no longer resemble the person who was once uncertain, searching, and desperate for validation. Your identity is clear, illuminated by the light of God's truth, cutting through the noise of your past. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Ephesians 2 verse 10. You are ready to release everything that held you back, for those burdens no longer serve you. Like the Apostle Paul, who encouraged us to press on toward the goal, you have left behind what is old and are stepping into what is new. The attachments that once weighed down your soul have been burned away by the purifying flames of God's transformation, leaving only your true essence rooted in Christ, unshakable. You've severed ties with the illusions that kept you bound, and in doing so you've stepped into a power that feels limitless, because it is grounded in Him who's limitless. This newfound strength is not merely a feeling, it is a reality. You are no longer defined by others' indecision or by the chaos of connections that once drained your energy. If God is for us, who can be against us? Romans 8 verse 31. You have risen above the noise, finding your footing on the solid ground of faith. Every wound, every scar is a testimony to God's faithfulness and your perseverance. As C.S. Lewis once wrote, hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. You have thrived, not just survived, through the storms of life. Your focus has shifted. No longer do you look back or question your worth, for those days are over. The most important lesson has been etched into your soul. You are enough, just as you are in Christ. Nothing from your past has the power to steal that truth away from you. The people who once disrupted your peace, who held sway over your emotions, are no longer in control. You have claimed that control through your identity in Christ, and with it, you have found a freedom that surpasses understanding. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Galatians 5 verse 1. This freedom, born of the Spirit, is not bound by circumstances or the opinions of others. You are rising, chosen by God, and nothing can stop the purpose He has set before you. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Isaiah 40 verse 31. This is only the beginning of your journey. What lies ahead is not mere survival, but thriving in every area of your life, in line with God's perfect plan for you. You are stepping into the highest version of yourself, crafted by His hands, and the future He has prepared is full of endless possibilities. But now is not the time to remain silent. You have a story to tell, a testimony that will shine as a beacon for others still walking through their own fires. As C.S. Lewis once said, "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream." Your journey is one of resilience, growth, and unshakable power through Christ. Share it boldly, for others need to hear the truth of what is possible when you surrender to God's plan and rise above the storms of life. Your story is a testament to the strength that lies within you because of Him who lives within you. This is your moment, your time to let your voice be heard. Continue to rise, continue to grow, and let your transformation be a testament to the incredible work of God's grace in your life. The world needs to hear your truth, and by sharing it, you become a light that guides others toward their own transformation. Let your story inspire, and may it be a testimony to the endless power of God's love and the strength He provides to those who trust in Him. This is your time, chosen by God, to step into the fullness of His plan for your life.